Good evening. We are live and we are back. It's been such a long time. It's been quite a few weeks since our last episode. In fact, it's been months since the last time I was here doing a live Q&A. Ask me anything about property investing. So I'm here for about the next half an hour really to answer your property investing questions. So if you've got a question for me that you'd like me to answer, make sure you pop it into the comment section on whichever platform you're watching. We're live on a few different platforms. First of all, let me know it's working by popping in a quick hello that you can see and hear me okay, because as I said, it's been a little while since the last one that we had. I want to make sure the tech is working. Before I realized I spent half an hour just speaking to myself. So just say a quick hi just so we can make sure all that's working okay. And I said I'll be here for about half an hour answering your property questions. This is something I used to do before on a weekly basis, but there's been a number of things we've been busy with. In fact, this is a new studio we've been building specifically to do more content just for you, and much of that will be live stream. So I can see Madassa, Paige, someone on Facebook and LinkedIn. The names are not showing up just now. So hi, and thank you for tuning in. I said, so the purpose of building this studio really is to be able to share more content with you, and particularly more live content as well, have guests on as well that we can interview and talk to about property investing and entrepreneurship, which are the things that I'm passionate about. And I'm guessing you're here this evening because it's something you're interested in as well. And, you know, I have some ideas about the people that I want to get on to these live chat shows. And it'd be really good to get your thoughts in terms of the kind of people you want me to be speaking to, interviewing, chatting to, digging deep into how they've done, what they've done, why they're doing what they do. And we'll also run these live streams at a few different times throughout the week just to try and work out which is going to be the best time to actually run them. As I said, we're still tweaking things in this studio. We're getting them set up. There's a little bits and pieces we still need to get right tech-wise. Unfortunately, you may have heard a few weeks ago we had a break-in. So although we were in the process of kitting out this studio, unfortunately somebody decided to break in and pinch some of the kit and the equipment that we had, which has set us back a little bit. But hey, that's not going to stop us. It might have set us back a little bit, but we are certainly going to march on. So remember, if you've got a question for me that you'd like me to answer around property investing, make sure you pop it into the comment section on whichever platform you're watching on. So we're streaming live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. So any of those platforms, and Twitter as well. So remember, if you've got a question, pop in the question section and we'll get onto it in just a moment. And then as well as that, just the other thing to inform you about is just a few doors away, we're setting up a training suite. A training suite is where we want to run more workshops and seminars really to help you progress in your property investing journey. And it's not going to be one of those big events with 100, 150 people. In fact, it's going to be limited to 30 people in each workshop. And the intention is in a few weeks' time to get those up and running as well. So if you want to know more about the training programs as and when we start running those, then make sure you ping me a message on whichever platform it is, and we'll keep you informed as and when those start. And then finally, the other thing I just want to mention before we jump into the questions was something I've been asked quite a lot and quite regularly, and the team get asked is, when are we going to start those network meetings again? Well, the good news is we are planning to start them very soon. We're just struggling with a suitable venue. So if you're in Birmingham and you know of venues that might be suitable for us, for at least 100 property investors to get together every month, then reach out. We want something that's a nice, good quality environment. That for me is really important. If you've been to any of my events before, you know we like to create a nice environment to be able to learn, network, and meet other people as well. So let me know if you've got any thoughts on that. That's really the only thing we're struggling with. Otherwise, we're good to go. The team are ready to start running those network meetings again. And we are looking to, if possible, maybe start for October. But it's all going to be down to the venue. So those are things I wanted to share. So those that are just joining us, thank you so much. These are live streams that I used to run before. It's been a few months, so we're starting them again. And this is an opportunity for me to answer your property investing question over the next half an hour or so that we're here. So let's jump into those questions. So Cal, if you want to throw the first question up on the screen for me, and we'll get that answered. So the first one from Madassa on Facebook: what would you predict on house prices in the next 4 or 5 years? That's a great question and a real difficult one to answer, because we've been through such a volatile change in the property market over the last few months. Last 2 years have just been really crazy. As the pandemic started to set in and lockdown started to happen, you know, my view at that time was, look, we're really heading for what could be possibly a crash in the marketplace, and we'll be in a very different place to to what we were thinking at that time. Now, clearly that didn't happen. In fact, the reverse happened. House prices went through the roof. And the reason it went through the roof because the government has a huge influence over the property market and stimulated it in such a way which meant that it created a huge amount of demand. How did it do that? It did that through low interest rates, stamp duty holidays, 95% mortgages, people just generally having more money. All of these things stimulated the market and has kept it moving. Now, there's different views right now where we are at this moment in time, as they're starting to see a little bit of slowdown. I was with one of the solicitors this morning. We're just completing on a transaction tomorrow. So we were signing documents today. And I was speaking to him about how he's found the market over the last few weeks since the stamp duty break, the first one at the end of June. So essentially July and August. And he says, well, it's been a little bit slower than he expected. And I've been speaking to an estate agent recently as well. And he's saying, well, we're still quite busy. So I guess it's a little bit difficult to say just yet. It'll probably be another couple of months or so before we start seeing what's happening right now. Your question was really, Mudassar, what's going to happen over the next 4 or 5 years? Personally, I think the market's going to continue to grow. We might just go through the little settling period. Then I think the market will continue to rise. There's a video I did recently about the property cycle, and my view is at the moment we're just in that early stage where I think it's going to grow. So I think we have a lot more growth to come in the coming years. That's my personal view. I'd love to know what you think, what your thoughts are. Where do you think we are in the property cycle, and what do you think is going to happen over the next few years? Because hey, the reality is none of us know. All we can do is use our best guesses based on our experience and knowledge over the time of being involved in property. So Mudassar, thank you so much for that question. Let's get the next question up, Khalid. From Catherine Kerr on YouTube. What is the difference in setting up a limited company or a sole trader, including the risk and benefits? So this is whether you start your property investing journey as a sole trader or a limited company. Well, generally speaking, what's been happening over the last few years is more and more people have started to buy property in limited companies as opposed to in their personal names. And the reason really for that is taxation. It means that we keep more money in our pocket than we have to pay in tax. And the government introduced what's called Section 24, which is how we are taxed on the property income, if you like. So if you've got a buy-to-let property in your personal name, or you've got a portfolio of properties, previously you'd be able to offset the interest as a cost, just like any other business. You'd offset costs that you have. But unfortunately, now we can no longer offset those costs. So what that means is the whole rental gross income is treated as though it was income without any cost offset against it, which of course means that people will now be paying tax, a lot more tax than what they were before. Even if they're not making a profit, they could still be taxed. And hence why, which is some people have decided property investors is no longer for them. They want to get out of the market, and that might be a time for them to exit. Other people, including ourselves, have decided, well, actually, it's a good time to be buying through property, through companies, and incorporate, which is what a lot of people have been doing. And as that's happened, more and more lenders have now got products that are suitable for buy-to-let investors, HMO investors, through limited companies, which there weren't as many available a few years ago, because this is now becoming the norm. So more and more lenders are funding in this way. So it's fairly easy to be able to raise finance in that way. Ultimately, you still personally guarantee the mortgage, even if it's in a company, as opposed to your personal name. The company doesn't really give you any barrier of protection as such if there was ever issue or default. But think about it as a separate legal entity. So this is a thing that I'd say most people probably miss when you talk about setting up a portfolio in a limited company, is that it's a third party, a third legal entity that you're effectively creating and building up assets in there. So if you're taking that money out for yourself, then you might incur some taxation again there. So these are the things to think about. And the reason people are using companies, because you can still offset the interest as an expense within a company where you can't on your personal name. That's really the main reason people are doing it, and it's become the norm. But really, because this is a tax question and it's based on individual circumstances, I strongly encourage you to, I think it's Catherine that asked a question, I strongly encourage you to speak to an accountant before you embark on this journey, which is going to be the right way for you. Then the second step before you start, I'd suggest sit down with a mortgage broker and have a chat to them about what you're trying to do, just to make sure what the accountant is advising in terms of a structure will also work to satisfy lenders when you come to borrow money. The last thing you want to do is set up a really efficient tax structured business, but then find that you're struggling to raise money because lenders are not happy with that structure. So there's the two things that you need to think about. So Catherine, thank you so much for that question. Let's get the next question up. Next one's on Instagram, which is from Preston. Would you recommend releasing equity from my residential property to invest in property? Well, look, if we have equity in our property, and when we talk about releasing property, effectively what we're doing, we're borrowing money against our home, and the asset that's being used as security is our home. Now, my personal view is whether it's a residential property or a buy-to-let property or any other type of investment, it's an asset that you own that you're borrowing money against. So you should treat them all in the same way. This is my personal view when it comes to these things. And I think if you're borrowing against your home, you're probably going to get the best rate, i.e. the lowest interest rate when it comes to borrowing money, lower than it will be, say, on investment property as buy-to-let property. The thing you have to think about when it comes to residential property, it's when you're borrowing, it's based on your income. So you need to have sufficient income to be able to support the additional borrowing that you're going to have. So let's say that's 4.5 times your income. And it varies. So you do need to speak to a mortgage broker. So I'm not a mortgage broker and I can't give you that advice. But generally speaking, if you're being able to borrow, say 4.5 times your total income, that is what you're going to be able to borrow against your home. So even though you might have a huge amount of equity, let's say, for example, you live in London and you've got £500,000 of equity in the property because the price has gone up significantly and you want to tap in to borrow some of that, you need to look at your overall borrowing and the affordability. So these are some of the things to think about. Some people have the view that you shouldn't really borrow against your home, you should only borrow investment property. My personal view is they're all your assets. It's up to you how you choose to borrow against it. My personal view. So let's get our next question up. Is from Jack Smith on YouTube. Hi Saj bro, how's it going? What do you think about buying commercial properties to extend and convert to residential going forward? Thank you. So Jack, yes, it's been a long time since you've been asking questions, so good to see you back. Oh, there's another little bit. Thank you for pointing that out. Like the new setup, by the way, looks dead professional. Thank you so much. Are you saying I wasn't professional before? I'm only kidding. Yeah, we're trying to improve. Look, we're investing in the technology to try and get better sound, better video, better lighting, really to have a better experience for you in terms of when you're spending time with me, as it were, in these live streams and recordings. So Jack, yes, I think it's a fantastic opportunity. I think it's a rare opportunity that we've been given by all the changes that are happening to planning over the last year or so. I think we'll have probably 2, maybe 3 years of advantage before more and more people start to do this. So if you think about, I think it's around 2012 when the government relaxed the rules around changing offices to residential use. There was a period of probably 2-3 years that a few developers who really were the early uptakes, if you like, really benefited from that and made a phenomenal amount of money. And then if you were going to do that now, say today, you were going to take an office building and turn it to residential, either the seller or the estate agent or both of them already built in the fact that you have this opportunity that you can convert it to residential without going through the full planning process. Essentially, it's easier to do that. And now they want a slice of that pie. So now you're paying way more for the property than you would have, say, back in 2012, 13, 14 at that time. So this is the way to think about commercial right now. There's certain commercial property that lends themselves to be able to convert to residential very easily, and I would be looking for those opportunities. We're ramping up our sourcing. I'm just starting to build up the sourcing team again because over the last year and a half, we've been working on the projects we've got and a little bit in the pipeline, but we really want to ramp that up as well now. And my team is growing as well. So, one of the things that we are looking at specifically is commercial opportunities, particularly around Birmingham and the surrounding areas. So if you come across anything interesting, certainly reach out to me. I'm open to having a chat, either paying you for that deal or potentially joint venturing with you as well. So I hope that helps there. Thank you so much for that question. Next question is from Imran on Facebook. How difficult is it to get a HMO license now that Birmingham is Article 4? So a couple of different parts of that question there, Imran. Licensing is separate to Article 4, which is planning. And I've got 2 videos on the YouTube channel which explain these 2 things in detail. If you search for those, search for HMO, they should come up on the YouTube channel. So with the licensing is the suitability of that property to be used for a certain number of people. For example, a 6-bedroom house, it needs to have a certain amount of minimum bedroom space, fire doors, fire alarms, kitchen needs to be a certain size. All these things are effectively need to be considered, as well as the person making the application for the license and the people that are going to be running it, i.e. the manager. It could be the same person, and that's what the license is issued on. Article 4 really deals with the permitted development side, of when people used to take a family home, including ourselves, and turn that into, say, up to a 6-person HMO without going through any planning approvals, because it was all permitted development. Article 4 means that's all been removed. So now you have to apply for planning permission first, get your planning approval, then you'd apply for your license separate. And generally speaking, your license is going to be based on the property itself. If the property is all fit and proper, as it were, then you're not going to have any issue getting the license. Planning is the one that you have to jump through in terms of hoops. So when it comes to getting planning permission for an Article 4 house, I know a few people have been doing this. We haven't made any application through Article 4 areas right now. We've been focusing on other projects. But what we found is that the areas where you've got a lot of HMOs already, your Edgbastons, Erdingtons, those are places you're going to struggle to get more HMOs, because effectively Birmingham Council want to control the amount of those that exist and new ones that are created. So the areas, say, further afield where there's not so many, if you're making an application there, as long as it met all the criteria, you'd probably be standing in a much better chance of getting approval for a property there. So that's what I would look at. But of course, you've got to make sure that you've got sufficient demand for the type of property you're thinking about in the area that you're thinking about as well. I hope that helps. I hope that answers your question. So Imran just adding on, and a credit to you and the team as a studio, and the YouTube channel content is excellent. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I guess it was a little bit of an accident when we started with creating this content, because we used to run the monthly property meet, and that was my way of connecting with property people and property investors, and sharing knowledge with them, and bringing great speakers to share their knowledge, and bringing people together to be able to connect with like-minded property people. But when lockdown happened, all that stopped, and I was thinking, so how long is this going to go on for? What are we going to do? So I made the decision, actually, I've got this YouTube channel that I've really just put a little bit of content on over the years. Let's focus on doing more good content on that. And that's what I started to do about a year ago, and I've just been blown away that we've just gone past 20,000 subscribers. I said the other day, I can't even visualize what 20,000 people looks like, never mind having that many people subscribe to the channel. I'm so grateful for you for watching the content. I appreciate the comment as well, Imran. Thank you so much. So our next question is on YouTube from Jamie Stevenson. I have asked before, but I'm struggling to get a buy-to-let mortgage based on the fact that I'm self-employed. I give myself a monthly wage, but the banks I have asked are only looking at my profit. I think this is going to be an issue, Jamie. However, what you really need to do is sit down with a good independent whole of market mortgage broker, and if you need someone for us to connect you with, just send us a message. In fact, we've got a form on the website, if you can find that, because I can't remember the link from memory, where we can then connect you with a broker that can help you with that. And essentially, there's a number of things that they will look at. So for example, you already own a property, your age, your income, as you said, it's profits in your company, how long it's been running. But there's certainly ways to make it happen. I can't promise you in every situation you can get a buy-to-let mortgage, but I would say with a good broker, you stand a much better chance than trying to do this on your own. And what's a good broker going to cost you? A few £100, £1,000 or something, maybe a little bit more to do this for you, but they can save you so much pain by having the right person on your team. And as I said, I'm not a financial advisor. I can't give you that advice, but I am a big fan of having the right people in your team to make your overall property investing journey a success. So let's get our next question up, Cal. This is from Lorraine Hall on Facebook. Is there anything I can get people who are selling a house to sign so that it stops them from selling to somebody else? So really good question, Lorraine. In fact, we're doing a video recording just earlier today, which should be out next week, where I was talking about this is one of the strategies I was using when I started about 15 years ago in property. I started off sourcing property, and the way we used to secure the property was a few different ways before we then take it to somebody else to sell it. So one way would be an option agreement, which is the most common way, and this is what I'd suggest you're probably going to be probably easiest for you to do, where it's essentially an option contract which gives you the right to be able to purchase that property, but you're not obligated to buy it. And you might have a period of time where you can do that. That might be, 4 weeks, 3 months, whatever the arrangement is that you have, because you've got to remember why a seller would do this in the first place. So I'm assuming you've worked through all that and you've got somebody that's motivated and keen to work with you. Now you just need to secure it. And at this stage, really, the paperwork is either an option agreement, as I said, like that, or alternatively, you could use a lockout or an exclusivity agreement as well. An exclusivity agreement is a little bit like what an estate agent would do. A lockout agreement just gives you a period of time. But personally, I think an option agreement is the safest way to do that. But probably what's more important than getting the seller to sign the option agreement is making sure that the seller is on board with you. They are happy with the arrangement of what you're doing, because that way, when it comes to signing other paperwork and doing the deal, they're not going to ghost you, disappear on you. They're going to work with you to get the deal done. Because you could get a seller to sign a document, but they're not really bought into seeing this through with you. And if that is the case, they can make your life so much difficult when it comes to completing on that transaction. So it is important that you've got a good relationship with the seller. So I hope that helps there, Lorraine. Next question is Masub Sharif Ali on LinkedIn. Hi Saj, what area would you say is a good place to start a rent to rent? Also, how do you determine whether a deal is profitable considering deposits, refurbishments, etc.? So 2 parts of the question there. The first is, how do you find a good area that's rent to rent? So personally, when I started doing HMOs, initially it was small HMOs, i.e. 4 people, then it was a larger one, 6, 7 people, and some rent to rents as well during that time. And as that business grew, what we would really focus on is where there's a demand. So what I mean by that is our portfolio of properties that we own and manage around Birmingham is, generally speaking, most of it falls into about 5 postcodes. It's not scattered throughout the city. That's because we've identified they're the places that work really well. There's a good, strong demand. So if there's property there that's good quality, we're going to rent it really easily. So you have to think about who your customer is effectively. In this case, our customers are young professionals, they're graduates, early 20s, late 30s, typically age range, mixture of both male, female, and they'll probably stay with us maybe 9-10 months typically in terms of a time frame. That's a fairly a common that's sort of fairly representative, if you like, of our tenants. Now, if, for instance, our tenants were, say, students, then I'd be looking at a different way to assess where the demand is going to be. So right now, you can jump onto websites like Spare Room and look at how many rooms have been advertised there, how many people are looking. But ultimately, it's about supply and demand. So you have to think about who your customer is, i.e. the end person that's going to live in that property. Is it a young professional? Is it what we call a blue-collar worker? Is it a student? Is it social housing? All of these things are going to impact where the demand is. Yeah. Let's say, for example, it's social housing you're looking at. If you're looking at social housing, then you're working with, say, people that are homeless, they are going to be less fussy in terms of where that property is versus, say, a young professional working in the city centre. Now, I'm not trying to stereotype each category, but what I'm saying is their needs and their expectations will be different. So you've got to think about that when you're researching, is there sufficient demand? Because demand is a very broad term. You need to break it down into who the demand is from. And then the next step would be you analyze how much you're going to be paying for that property in terms of the market rent for it or whatever you're looking to agree, what the costs are in terms of setting you up. As you mentioned, you might have a deposit cost. You might have even light refurbishment, tidying up, freshening up, decorating, new carpets, etc. Making sure it's kind of fully compliant from a HMO point of view as well, licensing point of view. You might have furniture costs. All of these things you need to think about as costs that are going to go into that property to get it up and running. When I started doing HMOs, my favorite type of rent was a former student house, or it was at that point, it was still a student house that really was starting to perform badly. What I mean by that is that the quality of other properties had significantly improved, whereas this landlord hadn't necessarily invested in their properties to improve them. And so they were now struggling to rent that out to the next intake of students, if you like. And also locations within Birmingham starting to change in terms of where students want to live. Now, those landlords started becoming distressed quite quickly because they were losing money. They weren't spending money on their properties either. And many of them, the ones I was speaking to, had already paid off their mortgages over many years, so they were unencumbered, i.e. no mortgages on them either. For me, that was the perfect landlord to do rent-to-rents with. I'd take the property on, I'd improve its condition, I'd repurpose it from a student house to a working professional house, and that's how we monetize them and made them work. So there's a few things to think about. We've got some videos on the YouTube channel that go into rent in a much more detail and explain the kind of things you need to think about and research in terms of demand and how to structure the deal as well, all on the channel. So I hope that helps you there. Our next question is on Instagram. Lord Ramiz, love your content. What is the time frame you'd advise to remortgage, release equity to buy more properties? Well, I'd say this is a good question for a mortgage broker, but I suspect they'd probably say you could do it within a few weeks, or it could drag on for several months. What I mean by that is all going to be down to your personal situation, how organized and prepared you are with everything that the lender is going to require, how suitable the property is. So essentially, they're assessing you, they're assessing the property, and then determine which is going to be the right product or offering they're prepared to give you, i.e. level of risk, amount of money for that to happen. And then other factors, sometimes how busy solicitors are, can slow things down as well. But you could do this within a few weeks, so you could do it quite quickly, or it could drag on for months and months. And I've had both cases where I've done things very, very quickly, and other times because of things that are outside my control, they've just dragged on and on trying to get things done as well, taking much, much longer than I thought we would take. And if you're looking at property, I would start your remortgage process as early as you can, so that you can have it all ready for the time when you need the property, when you need the money. So what you don't want to do is go out, look at property, make an offer, and say, great, I want to do that. Now I need to go and remortgage my other property to release the money in order to be able to do this purchase, because you don't know how long that remortgage is going to take. Is it going to be straightforward, or is it something that's going to drag on? This is why, again, I think you need to sit down with a good independent whole of market mortgage broker that should be able to help. And if you want to contact, just reach out to us. We can connect you with our guys that we like to work with that should be able to help. Let's get a next question up, Cal. So next question's on YouTube. Ben, hi Saj. Do housing association takes home from private lenders and on leases? Private landlords, I think, on leases. So my experience in Birmingham is, and we don't do a lot of social housing, we do a little bit. It's not really a core part of our business. And in Birmingham, there's been a big shake-up that's happening. Unfortunately, I think there's been a lot of abuse in terms of how this works. So Birmingham City Council are clamping down. And fortunately, it's not really a big part of our business. It's only a very small part of our business and what we do. And we dipped our toe into it last year just to kind of get a feel for, is it something we want to do more of? And, at this stage, we're still undecided. We want to see how the shake-up works. And if there's a higher barrier to entry, i.e. it's not easy to get into that sector, then it's something we'd want to do. And the reason for that is it just means there's less competition. Right now, I think it's too easy to do. Too many people are doing it badly, so they aren't doing a great job. Answering your question about whether they take the property, in my experience, what will happen, these housing associations will work with certain partners, and those partners will then provide them the properties. They'll also deliver the support and care as well, rather than the housing association taking the property on directly. I think if you did enough research, you might find somebody. I'm not sure what area you're in. If you do enough research, you might find there'll be some housing association might be willing to take that property on. I guess it all depends on supply and demand, how big they are, how organized they are, whether they're hungry to take properties on, or whether they've got more than enough properties and they'd rather create another layer around them of somebody else that takes care of some of the responsibilities, so they don't have to deal with the landlord directly. So Ben, hope that answers your question there. Let's get the next question up. So this will be the last question that we're doing for this evening. And remember, if you're enjoying this content, the intention is to do more of these live streams. We used to run them on a weekly basis before. We took a little bit of a break after a few months. We are now back. The plan is to do, as I said, more of these. I'm actually going to try them at different times of the week. Maybe an evening, a morning, a weekend, just to see what works better for people that are watching and for yourselves. And if you think there's a certain time that works better, is it an evening? I'm guessing for you it probably is an evening because you're here on an evening one with me, or whether a morning would work better, or maybe even a weekend. And then we'll review that, and as I said, we'll look to do more of these. So let's get that last question up before we wrap up for this evening. This is from Catherine Pringle on LinkedIn. Hi, Saj, please could you elaborate a bit regarding Article 4 areas and HMOs? What are the other reasons it might be rejected and how you might mitigate? For example, do neighbour rejections count? Do you need to do you need to demonstrate demand? Thank you. So, Catherine, it's not really about demand. Licensing's responsibilities ensure that the property is compliant. So licensing and planning are two separate things. Just flash the question up again, please, Cal. So Article 4 will be dealing specifically with planning. So when you're making a planning application, they're not really looking at your demand either, where there's a demand for the type of property you want. That's more of a commercial decision that you're making. They're really assessing from a planning point of view, is it compliant? So what they don't want, for example, is Birmingham, is it being squashed in between other HMOs. So they don't want to see 3 HMOs in a row. They don't want HMOs either side of a family house. Essentially, what they're trying to do in many cases is stop, like in Birmingham near the university, we've got streets and streets of student houses. So there's very few family homes there. They're just all streets and streets of student houses. So they become effectively no goals for families. And what planning are trying to do is prevent that kind of thing happening by creating these ghettos, if you like, of just HMOs. And really, if you are looking in an area, in my personal view, is that where there is not the saturation of HMOs, you are going to be more likely to be able to get the approval. And also, I'd look for the smaller ones rather than going over the big 7 or 8, maybe 5 and 6 that you're looking at, with potential scope to extend it later, because it'll be much easier to get that. And the other part of your question was neighbours, and I think yes, neighbours will have an impact, but they've got to have a legitimate reason rather than no, we don't want one next door to us because I don't like to have a HMO next door to me. That's not going to be a sufficient reason. But remember, if you've got lots of neighbours turning against you in your application, they're not going to make your life any easy. They'll make your life very difficult there as well. So it's getting the neighbours to understand. One of my students is my mentees. They're just setting up a HMO now. They're making a planning application, and the neighbours won't even talk to them. They might listen to what it is that they've got to say and explain what type of house it will be. So these things are not going to make it easy for you. And if you're somewhere where it can be a little bit more challenging, where it's quite difficult to get approvals, so I'm not sure where you're based, then I would enlist the help of a good planning consultant that might be able to assist you with that. And again, if you want to be connected with somebody, reach out to us and we can try and connect you with somebody that might be able to help. I think it's worth the initial investment of getting them on board, which increases the certainty of you being able to get the approval that you need before you go in with a planning application. So I hope that answers your question. That just leaves me to say thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking time out, your busy evening, to be here. As I said, I'm so excited to be back. We've nearly finished tweaking the studio. There's a few bits and pieces still left to do. Give me some feedback in terms of lighting, sound. It's all working well. And anything you'd like to see different on these live streams that we'll be doing, we intend to do a lot more of them in the coming weeks and months. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you again very soon.